Hi, everybody. Welcome to the November 11th, 2016 edition of Colorado Inside Post. Give me a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. A special thank you to all of our veterans celebrating Veterans Day. Thank you for your service. I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Let's get started. Let's get a quick take on Donald Trump's historic win, which essentially restructures the entire polling industry. While his Electoral College victory included many battleground swing states, Colorado gave Hillary the nod and became a rare blue island on a very red map. Let's get into a little bit more than we did on the show. Patty Calhoun from Westward. Now we have a president-elect Trump. It's not what possibly could happen. We know it's going to happen. When you look at the first days, whether it's up until Inauguration Day or maybe his first month as president, what do you see as the first things on his to-do list that we're going to see?
Well, and it's good to look to the future because we're going to be parsing the past for a long time to figure out what happened. But first of all, it can only go up from my level of expectation, which, I guess really total obliteration is my level of expectation. So let's hope it looks up. The fact that his speech on, at 3 in the morning, when usually he's not very good with his tweeting, but at 3 in the morning when he made his acceptance speech was actually a fairly gracious for him speech, that he stayed off Twitter for a while, that he seemed to behave himself when he was meeting with Obama, gave me some hope, but then he was back to tweeting against the media. The one thing that I have hopes for is he likes good ratings. He likes to be liked. So maybe at this point, he really will stick with when he said, I want to be the president of all America. And by that, he means the Muslims that are here, the women who are here that he's not grabbing, the African Americans who don't live in the ghetto, the Latinos who are here and are good members of society. So maybe he will actually decide he wants to be a president for everyone. Maybe he'll bring in cabinet members that aren't all old, crazy, adulterous white men. We'll see. But I'm trying to be optimistic and write a good script because this is a man who likes good ratings.
Mike Krause, the Independence Institute. I think Patty brings up a good point. Is the bar set so low that all he has to do, really, for a lot of folks who at least are looking at this with uncertainty, is be somewhat normal for a good 100 days to just calm everybody down? Or does he make a splash because that'd be good ratings?
Well, it's not really about making a splash or calming people down. There's an important point to be made here, and that is that if you look back at the WikiLeaks dumps of the DNC and especially of Podesta, the Democratic power broker, you see evidence of what many people have believed for a long time, that there is a Democratic political class in this country that is insular, self-serving, and exploitative of power. That this election was a repudiation of that class. They now have nothing. They now control no branch of the government except temporarily the administrative and regulatory apparatus of the federal government. So the most important thing Donald Trump can do is go in and start changing personnel within the regulatory and administrative apparatus, because that's where the real power lies these days in Washington, D.C., and that's where the money gets spent. And a lot of it's on autopilot, because keep in mind, Congress doesn't vote on regulations. These administrative agencies get to write rules and regulations and put them out for public comment. And so I think if Donald Trump wanted to do something significant in the first 100 days, it would be to do a dramatic shakeup of this massive leviathan of an administrative state that we have in this country, which means putting people in charge of these that will start scaling back the unsustainable rules, regulations, starting with the Clean Power Plan. Quite frankly, I hope that thing goes away within the first 100 days. I hope the EPA, whoever he puts in charge of the EPA, goes in and just tosses it out the window.
I don't argue the efficacy of your point there, Mike, but that just doesn't seem to have nearly enough flash for the first 100 days for Donald Trump.
Look, we're not talking about, look, I don't want a presidency that's about flash. I want a presidency that's willing to go in and shake up what has become an unsustainable, massive leviathan of a regulatory state. Now, whether or not he'll do that, if you're looking for flash, I think the best thing he can do is go in and sign and start signing kind of cool, sexy executive orders about wardrobe change and
cool, sexy
and
seems
what
to
kind of cars people
yeah.
should be chauffeured around in instead of limos, et cetera, et cetera.
Eric Sonderman, political analyst. So as we look at this, whether it's the folks he's hiring for the cabinet or his priorities for the first 100 days, do you see red meat being thrown to the base? Do you see something to unify America? What's the priority?
I see yes and yes. And I think it might change on a 24-hour cycle or more often in keeping with this personality. of you never know what you get, and who seems to define national interests in very personal terms of whether somebody's been nice to him or mean to him in the last 12 or 24 hours. That is what I find most worrisome about our new president-elect, is sort of the lack of perspective of what true national interests are versus my personal interests. And I'd go out there and say some psychological characteristics that we'll say are at least disturbing or worrisome. I think the initial appointments he makes, and I assume they're going to come sooner rather than later, are important because they're going to set a tone. I think the symbol of who he appoints early on, whether it's his chief of staff or the first several cabinet jobs, are they all red meat to the base appointments, or are they professional, competent administrators that significant, not the whole country, they're always going to be never Trumpers, but that a significant share of the country can have confidence in, that this is going to be a competent administration. To what extent does he defer to the Paul Ryans and others in terms of a legislative agenda that is more classically conservative? To what extent does he go his own way? A lot of the activity early on is going to be repealing Obama executive orders. And and that's something the president can do unilaterally. And I think the first week of office is going to be a whole lot of repeals of executive orders. Lastly, I think he's going to put a priority on economic issues. That is what, yes, there were some parts of his base that heard various dog whistles of one kind or another. But the biggest chunk of his vote is driven by economic anxiety, economic dissatisfaction. If he can get this country growing as the way it has over the long scope of time at 3 or 3.5% instead of the lackluster 1% we've been growing at, a lot of other issues take care of themselves.
Penn Tate, attorney at QTech Rock, also a longtime state lawmaker. Because we're in such an uncertain time, we have a president with no political experience. We can't point to a voting record. We can't point to what he did governing something else. What do you're trying to get our crystal ball out here, what do you expect, whether it's hiring before Inauguration Day or what the first 100 days look like?
I will preface everything by saying I hope I'm wrong on every score, but here goes. I agree with a couple points Patty and Mike made that I think are foundational to what happens. I think our president-elect is a narcissist of the first order, and I think flash is what he's all about. It is about the show and him. And so I think that's going to be the undercurrent that drives everything that happens from this point forward. I think he's going to do red meat to the base initially. I think he's going to go after the Affordable Care Act. My concern is I don't think Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell, although they've had 6 years to think about this, really have a comprehensive substitute solution for the Affordable Care Act. So that has the potential to be a mess. I think Eric's right where at the end of the day, he's got to deal with the economy because that is what I think propelled him into office. It's a lot of people, working class folks, regardless of political affiliation, who thought they'd been left behind for some reason. That we took care of the auto industry, we saved all of these big banks that did all these stupid things and lost tons of our money out of our 401ks and IRAs, and now we're broke and they're all healthy again, and we got the short end of it. So I think he's got to address the financial piece. Part of the issue I think he's going to have is the people who are already swirling around him are not folks who inspire confidence, I think, in the general public. Rudy Giuliani, sometimes I hear him talk and I think, the former mayor's lost a few here. He's not all with us. Newt Gingrich, this is a guy who I think is both a cynic and a liar, almost beyond comparison. So there's no telling what he will do. Reince Priebus, I have more faith and confidence in, and some of the other folks, but he's now going to be stuck between having to appease Republicans because after all, he was their nominee and the party is going to expect things from him, but also try to be true to the constituency that really got him elected, which is disaffected working folks, which he is not and hasn't been in a long time. And so who talks to him about that? Because the people around him aren't working class stiffs, trying to get $15 an hour. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think fundamentally he's got to figure out in his own head, what do I do to keep people liking me? Because what I think he's going to find is as soon as people start saying, oh, look, he's another one of them. He got in office. He told us he was going to do this. Now we're still getting hammered. And he's got $1 bajillion, and his kids are running all these businesses with these big buildings with his names all over them. And once he loses people, I think it's going to be hard for him to get people back. So he's got to figure out how to appease his professional political friends in the Republican Party, but also be true to his base.
That is all the time we have for Colorado Inside Postgame this week. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.